I've noted there is an increasing emphasis on mechanisms of action in behavioral and social interventions research. I've heard that it is no longer enough to study whether an intervention works, but that it is important also to study how an intervention works.
I'm noticing the same thing, but it is a tough concept. What exactly is a mechanism of action?
As I understand it, a mechanism of action is the reason why an intervention produces an outcome. In other words, it is the cause for the intervention's effect.
That's how I understand it too. It answers the question, how did the intervention work? But isn't that the same thing as a mediator?
No, not exactly. A mediator is a broader term referring to one or more variables that come between the intervention and the outcome in a causal chain of events. Alan Costin of Yale University defines a mediator as an intervening variable that may account statistically for the relationship between the intervention and the outcome. He defines a mechanism of action as a special case of mediation, referring to the processes or events that are responsible for the outcome.
That means that a mechanism of action is a very particular kind of mediator. All mechanisms are mediators, but not all mediators are mechanisms.
That's right.
Let's talk about some examples of mediators that are mechanisms, and some that are not. That might help to clarify the concept.
Good idea. First, we need to think of a hypothetical intervention and its hypothetical effects.
Let's use the example of a media campaign to increase adults' use of professional preventive dental care. Let's say that we broadcast a 30-second radio message describing the importance of a regular dental cleaning by an oral care provider.
Okay, and to make it easier to talk about mediators and mechanisms, we'll just assume that everyone in our target community heard the radio broadcast and that they understood the messages delivered.
Good. And let's say that the messages delivered in the radio broadcast were that regular cleanings by an oral care provider can help prevent tooth decay and tooth loss.
Okay, so we broadcast a message encouraging regular dental checkups. And let's assume that we know that everyone who heard the radio message followed up by getting a dental cleaning, and that they did so because of the radio message.
Great. That means that our intervention was perfectly efficacious. 100% of the people who heard the radio message responded by getting a dental cleaning.
It would be nice to have a perfect intervention like that, wouldn't it?
It sure would.
And because we are talking about mechanisms of action, we'll need to assume that we designed our study in a way that allows for us to make causal conclusions.
Right. For the sake of our example, we will assume that we know that people who heard the radio messages got their dental cleanings because of the radio messages. In other words, we'll assume that we know that the radio messages caused the study participants to access professional dental care.
Great. Now we are ready to talk about mediators and mechanisms. Remember that a mediator is a broad class of variables that sit between the intervention and an outcome in the causal chain of events. When there is mediation, that means that an intervention has an indirect effect on the outcome. It means that the intervention works through the mediator to produce the outcome.
Right. And a mechanism of action is a more specific kind of mediation. A mechanism of action answers the question, how did the intervention work? In our example, how did the radio messages cause people to access dental cleanings?
Exactly. Now let's imagine some variables we could observe in our radio example, and talk about whether each variable is just a mediator, or whether it could be a mechanism of action.
Okay. Let's say that we observe that everyone who went for dental cleanings made an appointment to get their cleanings. If everyone who heard the radio message made an appointment to get a dental cleaning, then it sounds like making an appointment to get a cleaning could be a mediator between the radio message intervention and the outcome of dental cleanings.
It sounds like you are using the Barron and Kenny logic for analyzing mediation. First, we test whether the radio message was highly related to getting a dental cleaning. We're imagining that everyone who heard the message got a dental cleaning, so the intervention is perfectly related to the outcome.
That's the first part of Barron and Kenny's logic. The second part is that we test whether the radio message was highly related to making an appointment. Since we are imagining that everyone who heard the radio message made an appointment, the intervention is perfectly related to the potential mediator.
And the third part of Baron and Kenny's approach is to test whether the potential mediator is related to the outcome. In our example, this means testing whether making an appointment is related to getting a dental cleaning. Let's say that almost everyone who made an appointment actually kept their appointment and got a dental cleaning.
That would be nice for providers, wouldn't it?
And the fourth part of the mediation logic is to test whether the strength of the relationship between the intervention and the outcome diminishes when accounting for the role of the potential mediator. In our example, we would test whether the relationship between the radio message and actually getting a dental cleaning diminishes after accounting for making a dental appointment. Because of the example we've invented, the relationship between the radio message and getting dental cleanings would nearly disappear after accounting for making a dental appointment.
So after meeting all of the conditions for statistical mediation, we could conclude that making a dental appointment is a strong mediator between our intervention and our outcome.
Yes. From a statistical standpoint, making a dental appointment would be an almost perfect mediator between the radio message and getting a dental cleaning. So is that mediator the mechanism of action of the radio message intervention? Is it the process that explains why people got dental cleanings?
It doesn't seem to make sense to say that the cause of getting dental cleanings was making a dental appointment. Making the appointment was an important prerequisite for getting a cleaning, but it doesn't make sense to call it the cause for the cleanings.
I agree. Making an appointment could be a proxy for some other variable. For instance, our radio message may have increased the salience of oral health for listeners, or maybe the radio message created a perception of regular dental cleanings as a social norm. Or perhaps the radio message provided new information about the connection between cleanings and preventing tooth loss, or it may have inspired family or classroom discussions of visiting the dentist.
And if we didn't measure any of these variables in our study, we wouldn't know whether they played any role in the outcome.
That's right. We'll have good information about how important it is to make a dental appointment, but we won't have any information about why people make dental appointments after hearing the radio message.
I guess if we had a perfect radio intervention, we wouldn't worry so much about how it works. But since we haven't developed a perfect intervention yet, and since we need to make tough decisions about how to use our healthcare resources wisely, it is especially important to study mechanisms.
True that.
Double true.